I'd like to give a little background on some of the assumptions that are being made here. Because one of those assumptions is we're not calorie burning machines, and that's very, very counter to what we've all been taught, since like before we were born kind of thing. So what are we talking about there? And that's a fascinating one, because this idea of burning calories was actually something that was thought of in 1825 in the railroad, because the whole calorimeter and the idea of calories coming as a form of energy came from the railroad. Because the railroad, and I'll make this brief, but you can also go back and search the previous recordings, and there's a lot more about this. The railroad in 1825 was run on steam engines. And so they were looking for cheap fuel that would create massive amounts of heat to heat water to create steam for a steam engine. And they created a device called a bomb calorimeter, and it had a little ball inside that was called a bomb, where they would put fuel. And around this bomb was water held in a larger cylinder, and they put a thermometer into the water. And as they burned the fuel, they measured how much the temperature of water rose. Every 1 degree rise in temperature of 1 gram of water was a calorie. And this device made sense, because what did the railroad want to do? They wanted to burn fuel to create heat to raise the temperature of water to run a steam engine. In 1865, the USDA asked a German chemist named Olin Atwater to figure out how to run people on the cheapest fuel possible and get the most amount of work out of them. God bless our country. How do you work people half to death for the cheapest food possible, right? Atwater did not have the science available to answer the question, because we didn't know how energy worked in the body until beginning in 1929. But actually the Nobel Prize for Science was given to 3 scientists in 1997, who actually figured out how adenosine triphosphate works in cells, and therefore how energy works in the body, and defined it all. So 130 years before we knew how energy worked in the body, a German chemist was given the job of figuring out how energy worked in the body, right? And since he didn't know, he decided, why reinvent the wheel? And he started looking to see if anybody else was figuring out how to use cheap energy to get maximum amount of energy. And guess what? The railroad was doing that exact thing for 40 years with his device called a bomb calorimeter. So he started literally burning food in a bomb calorimeter and measuring the rise in temperature of the water, which is why a calorie to this day is defined as the amount of energy it takes to raise the temperature of a milliliter of water or a gram of water 1 degree Celsius. Only in food, we use what's called a big C calorie, which is how much heat it takes to raise the temperature of a liter of water 1 degree Celsius. So we're literally still using the definition that made perfect sense for the railroad, even though we don't burn anything by fire in our body, and we don't raise the temperature of the water of our body. Our body temperature is in stasis. It stays the same, or else we're sick, right? And none of what we've done is ineffective in the body. And it's curious, because Olin Atwater, when he was burning foods, he came up with what he called the Atwater factors, because when he burned enough food, he started realizing that every gram of protein would produce 4 calories, every gram of carbohydrate would produce 4 calories, every gram of fat would produce 9 calories. And he started noticing that consistency, and he called them the Atwater factors. And then he started creating a database by which food companies wouldn't have to actually burn their food anymore. They could just know how many grams of fat, carbohydrate, and calories were and calculate it. And this is what we've been using ever since. Now, there's been 160 years of science, about 100 of which has been really intense on discovery inside the body, which all started, by the way, with the advent of the electron microscope. First time we could look into cells and see how cells work. And then data just started to explode. We learned about vitamins. We learned about a few minerals we didn't know about, phytonutrients. We had the whole freaking human genome project, for God's sake. And now here we are in 2022. And what's the debate in nutrition? Calories and macros. What are macros? Another name for the Atwater factors: fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. It's just another name for the Atwater factor from 1865, when we knew nothing. Our nutrition debate is literally ignoring 100 years of scientific discovery inside the body. So no, we don't burn calories. Calories have never been a thing in the body. And we've proven that for so much time because we've tried to manipulate calories in the body every which way. And we're still getting what? Fatter and sicker and more tired.